It was a quiet California suburb in 1980. Families tucked safely into their homes, the night peaceful and uneventful. But hidden evil was lurking, ready to shatter this tranquility. Hello guys, and thank you for joining us again at Crimeco, where we meticulously dissect some of the most chilling true crime cases from every corner of the globe, providing you with the most recent and in-depth information. If this sparks your interest, we would be delighted if you could subscribe to the channel. Also, giving this video a like significantly supports our channel's growth. We appreciate your help. Now, let's plunge into today's intriguing case. Anaheim, California in the 1970s was a rapidly growing suburban community, home to Disneyland, and a population boom of middle-class families seeking an idyllic place to raise their children. It was here that Dorothy Scott settled, hoping to provide a quiet, wholesome upbringing for her 4-year-old son Shanti. Dorothy worked as a secretary for a psychedelic shop called Swinger's Psych Shop and a head shop called Custom John's Head Shop, both located in Anaheim and owned by John Cosella. By all accounts, 32-year-old Dorothy was a devoted single mother who preferred staying home with her son to going out. Her coworkers saw her as a sweet, gentle soul who avoided and drank only socially. She was a faithful churchgoer who enjoyed sewing and collecting porcelain dolls in her spare time. In early 1980, Dorothy's tranquil life took a nightmarish turn. She started receiving alarming phone calls from an unidentified man while working at Swinger's. He would describe details of Dorothy's day that no stranger could possibly know, and would alternate between proclaiming love for her and violently threatening her life. Dorothy was deeply disturbed by the calls, particularly one where the man growled, "I'm going to up into bits so no one will ever find you." Frightened, Dorothy considered purchasing a handgun and began taking karate lessons. But fate would cruelly intervene before she had a chance to defend herself against this psycho stalker. On the night of May 28th, Dorothy's concerned nature would lead her directly into peril. On that fateful night, Dorothy noticed her coworker Conrad Bostrom was unwell at a staff meeting. His arm was red and swollen, the result of a poisonous black widow spider bite. Always one to help others, Dorothy volunteered to drive Conrad to the emergency room, along with another coworker named Pam Head. First, they stopped by Dorothy's parents' home to check on her young son, who was in their care while she worked. Here, she changed the black scarf she was wearing to a bold red one. Then the trio headed to the ER at the UC Irvine Medical Center. Doctors treated Conrad while Pam and Dorothy waited together in the lobby, never leaving each other's sides. Around 11 p.m., Conrad was discharged with a prescription. Kind-hearted Dorothy offered to bring her car around so Conrad wouldn't have to walk far in his condition. She briefly used the restroom, then headed to the parking lot while Pam stayed with Conrad. Minutes ticked by, but Dorothy didn't return. Pam and Conrad ventured to the lot themselves, expecting to see her pull up. Instead, they caught a fleeting glimpse of her station wagon speeding out of the hospital grounds. The bright headlights obscured the driver's identity. Had Dorothy rushed off to tend to her son, or had some great misfortune befallen her? Hours passed with no word. Worry mounting, Pam and Conrad alerted the authorities, but the police found nothing amiss at Dorothy's parents' home, and a search provided no clues. Finally, at dawn, a fiery discovery was made that confirmed their worst fears. At around 5 a.m. on the morning of May 29, 1980, police received reports of a burning vehicle in an alley approximately 10 miles from the hospital. Arriving on the scene, they made a grim find. Dorothy Scott's white 1973 Toyota station wagon was engulfed in raging flames, utterly destroyed. But there was no sign of Dorothy or anyone else at the area. The investigation kicked into high gear after this chilling development. Detectives questioned Pam and Conrad extensively, piecing together a timeline of the last hours they saw Dorothy. The police also followed up on the workplace stalker Dorothy had confided in friends about. They wondered if this man could be responsible for her disappearance and the destruction of her car. But with no leads, Dorothy's anguished parents Vera and Jacob took matters into their own hands. They reached out to local media, sharing their daughter's story and offering a $25,000 reward for information on her whereabouts. It was then that Vera revealed she had been receiving terrifying calls herself at home. A man's voice would ask, "Are you related to Dorothy Scott?" When Vera said yes, He would say, "I've got her," then hang up abruptly. This mysterious caller tormented Vera constantly, phoning nearly every Wednesday to taunt and threaten. Police tapped the Scott's phone, but could never keep him on the line long enough to trace the call. It seemed Dorothy's abductor was now stalking her grieving mother. The investigation into Dorothy Scott's disappearance seemed at a dead end until a bombshell revelation on June 12, 1980. On that day, the editor of the local Santa Ana Register newspaper received an anonymous call from a man claiming to have Dorothy. I killed Dorothy Scott," the eerie voice admitted. "She was my love. I caught her cheating with another man. She denied having someone else. I killed her." The caller then rattled off chilling details about the night of May 28th that had never been made public. He knew that Conrad had been bitten by a spider and that Dorothy had changed her scarf to red before going to the hospital. It was clear this was not just a cruel prankster, but very likely Dorothy's killer himself. The police were now convinced her stalker was indeed responsible, but without more substantial evidence, they were powerless to act. And so the torment continued, with Dorothy's obsessed psychopath phoning her elderly mother almost every week for 4 agonizing years. The family held on to hope that Dorothy might still be alive, held captive somewhere by this madman. Each time the phone rang, they prayed it would be Dorothy on the other end. Their hopes were tragically dashed in August of 1984, when chance led to a grim discovery that finally unlocked the mystery surrounding her fate. On August 6, 1984, a construction worker named Jessa Loza made a chilling find in Anaheim Hills, an undeveloped area north of the city. While preparing to lay underground pipes, Loza spotted a human skull and other skeletal remains scattered just 30 feet from a remote stretch of Santa Ana Canyon Road. The bones were bleached and weathered, indicating they had been there for years. In fact, some were partially charred, likely from a brush fire that had swept through in 1982. Alongside the bones lay the skeleton of a dog. Initially, police theorized the remains could be a hiker who perished along with his pet. But dental records would soon confirm the bones belonged to the long-missing Dorothy Scott. Her distinctive turquoise ring was found among the remains, erasing any doubts. After 4 agonizing years, Dorothy's parents finally had an answer about their daughter's fate, though the details of how she met her end remained a mystery. An autopsy of the bones could not conclusively determine a cause of death, but authorities felt certain foul play was involved given the circumstantial evidence. Dorothy's panicked departure from the hospital parking lot, the burning of her car, the haunting calls to her mother. All clues pointed to her stalker finally making good on his threats to abduct and murder the poor woman. The discovery of Dorothy's body renewed interest in solving her lingering murder, but without further evidence, her killer remained free. Vera and Jacob Scott died in later years, never seeing justice for their daughter. To this day, Dorothy's disappearance and homicide remains an open case nearly 45 years later. Dorothy Scott's tragic murder has haunted detectives for decades. Several suspects have emerged over the years, but definitive evidence has been elusive. One early suspicion fell on Dorothy's ex-boyfriend and father of her young son, Shanti, but he had a solid alibi placing him in another state when she vanished. More intrigue surrounds a coworker's brother who was reportedly obsessed with Dorothy. Coworkers claimed this man was infatuated and angry that Dorothy spurned his advances. Police looked closely at him, but never gathered enough proof for charges. He died in 2014, taking any secrets to the grave. Without question, the strongest person of interest is the anonymous stalker whose chilling calls tormented Dorothy and her mother for years. His intimate knowledge of her movements points to someone with disturbing access to her day-to-day life. An estranged friend? A vengeful ex? A delusional admirer fixated from afar? Profilers painted a portrait of a paranoid and deeply insecure man who felt rejected by Dorothy, projecting fantasies of a relationship she had no interest in. Yet his true identity has never come to light. Phone tracing technology in 1980 was primitive, unable to pinpoint his location before he hung up. And the caller was careful, never leaving tangible traces like fingerprints or notes. After decades, authorities are no closer to attaching a name or face to this phantom menace. Dorothy's case is a sobering reminder that stalking and violence against women was often dismissed in a bygone era. Had this happened today, perhaps Dorothy's complaints would have been taken more seriously by those around her. We can hope that awareness and vigilance will prevent such tragedies in the future. Yet the full truth of what happened to Dorothy Scott may forever remain shrouded in mystery and haunting questions. Dorothy Scott's heartbreaking story illustrates the lurking evils that can hide beneath the tranquil veneer of suburban life. Her kindness in helping a coworker led her into the clutches of a psychotic stalker, someone who had been observing her every move for months. This faceless criminal masterminded her abduction and murder, then sadistically furthered her family's anguish with twisted phone calls. Yet after nearly half a century, Dorothy's case remains unsolved, her files gathering dust in police archives. The tragedy is compounded by the lack of closure for her loved ones and the knowledge her killer eluded justice. Still, there is always a glimmer of hope that advances in investigative technology could someday link evidence to identify a suspect. Dorothy's life was cut short just as she was blossoming into a loving mother and independent career woman. But her spirit lives on through the son who was just 4 years old when she vanished, now a grown man who still yearns for the truth. And her memory endures as a cautionary tale to always be vigilant of potential dangers, even in the security of a suburban America. While mysteries remain surrounding Dorothy's final days, we will remember her warm smile captured in photos. A woman beloved by many, whose life was tragically cut short by an evil still lurking unknown. Her legacy calls on us to take all threats seriously and value each day we are given. For we never know when darkness may descend without warning, just as it did on that sinister night in 1980. This concludes our today's exploration on the harrowing mystery of Dorothy Scott's disappearance and murder. Let us honor her memory by living each moment to the fullest. And may justice someday be served to the villain who cut short her precious time on this earth. We will never forget you, Dorothy. Before you leave, please remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell. This will ensure you stay informed about the latest true crime cases we unravel. We're grateful to have you as part of our community as we delve into the captivating mysteries that continue to intrigue us all. Stay curious, and remember that justice sometimes lurks in the darkest corners. Thank you for spending your time with us, and we eagerly anticipate seeing you in our next exploration.